You can put. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Myself Irshad Chohan, and today's topic is Gen AI for every developers. We'll talk about the agenda shortly. Uh, just two things again to remind. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in chat when I would be speaking, and when I would be asking that if there is any questions from the floor, then you can simply unmute yourself and talk. Second, today we are going to talk about generative AI for every developers, right? There are so it is the today's agenda, and for this workshop is it would be a workshop. When I say workshop, it would be basically we recommend that you should be logged in from your laptop, right? Because if you're just joining from mobile phone, it won't be of any help. We would be doing a lot of workshop with respect to any programming coding language which you are comfortable with. Okay, what is today's topic is about? So generative AI, we all know it with the different names. So one of that would be, let's say somebody is using it as a developer who is building on top of generative AI, right? Uh, Another is any other developer, like maybe I'm just a Java developer or a Python developer, or maybe I could be maybe I'm data science engineer, right? Or even an automation engineer who is working on Selenium or something like that, right? So any of this sort of technology as well, how they can benefit from generative AI, right? So that's the today's agenda, and that is what we want to basically talk about. The number one, the first point is what is generative AI, right? Generative AI, we all know by different means and names. It could be, let's say I'm calling it as a GPT or chat GPT, as people know, right? Or it could be large language models like LLMs, which we call, or we call it foundation models, right? So the technology behind is something which is called generative AI, and that is the today's agenda, that how to leverage generative AI for any developers what you are. Right? We are going to talk about not only that how you develop or how you can get help in terms of developing the code or basically acting as a code assistant, but what other areas you can actually take help from generative AI. So with that agenda in mind, we will start. Okay. So generative AI we discussed, right? So this would be the agenda, that what is the generative AI, how developers are impacted right now, and then how you can actually well equip yourself in this new era, right? How this is going to replace developers and how you can leverage it, and eventually at the end we are going to do a workshop. So we talked about generative AI. So one of them is a large language model, and that is what we are going to focus today. So our focus would be mostly sticking ourselves to the large language models, or typically on the which is available as a just as an API, right? So we would be using for today's demo mostly ChatGPT, but you can use Claude.ai or some or other platforms which are available for your work. There are other types of foundation models available, not only the large language models, but let's say the GAN model, which we typically call. So if you see, these are typically used in terms of generating something. Generating something could be images, could be videos, right? Where you put a text, ki, okay, show me a picture of elephant sitting in a boat, right? And let's say you put something like that as a message, it will tries to generate an image based on its data trained, right? Other tech which is being used is what we know by the GPT, generative pre-transfer model, right? So these are like different tech. We don't need to know about each of these terms because we are not going to develop our own foundation models here. We are simply going to leverage it, right? Now, I don't have to repeat these parts, but just for the sake of setting up this stage, how current developers are being impacted. Maybe it has already been started in your organizations. Some organizations has already accelerated their adoption. Some are still in phase, they are still in dilemma, but yes, this is eventually going to hit every one of us as a developer. What it helps, number one is the timeline. Things which even an experienced developer could take weeks, those works are actually being delivered and done within minutes, right? And with a small bit of tuning to tweaking, you can get the work of done worth of work done within 2 weeks to just within an hour, right? So that's the power of technology, what it is giving it to us. Now, what is happening with that is, as people are getting more well versed with generative AI being used as a documentation, sorry, as a language, the another what is happening is that expectation from developers is being increased day by day. Just to maybe cite some of the personal examples, I have not worked on technology, let's say Rust or a Flutter, right? I have not coded anything in that language. But still, if I have to write maybe a smaller code or a proof of concept or a small prototyping project, I will be able to do within one day without even learning a particular stack of technology, right? That means earlier people are still overwhelmed, especially developers were overwhelmed that they need to do all from front end engineering to back end development and plus how to deploy these things. And we call them as a full stack engineer. But now it is basically that we are increasing that expectation to one more other level, maybe calling it as a full stack engineer plus plus, something like that. On the other, same kind of problems is also happening with the fresh engineers who are, maybe if you are already under the graduation, right, or you are just fresh out of the college, first year into the job as an intern. Barrier of entry is very high. I have seen personally that my being me myself being experienced in the industry, let's say for 15 years, it keeps me in the same line of any smart fresh engineer coming out of the college, because basic code writing or code or programming, that is something is being automated. And when we say what is programming versus engineering, that's we'll discuss in a bit, but that's this point. That means today a typical interview of asking would also be changing in upcoming years, right? It won't be like say, okay, I'll ask you the questions on top of, okay, what are the fundamentals of Java, or help me write X program in Java or Y program in Java, or what is threading and what is not, right? Yes, it would be it would still validate or test your knowledge in terms of the fundamentals of the programming, that would still be intact. But learning a particular language, that would go away. People would not hire you for you being a Python developer or a Java developer or .NET developer, but yes, they would hire you for a programming engineer or maybe a software development engineer kind of a. So okay. Yes, it is actually making us very fast, getting things done, as we talked about, weeks worth of efforts within minutes or within an hour. But still, there are certain level or challenges which basically these models are not able to solve, or which, let's say, I'll simply name it, generative AI is not able to solve. And that is where the power of being a human comes into picture. And uh, these models, or basically companies, would still rely on humans for their depth of a particular language or depth of a particular coding framework, or that would help you spot if generative AI is going rogue or not doing things which you are being asked for, right? So that happens that 80% of the time your work is being done by this model itself. But on top of it, you still need to do that 20% of heavy lifting. But again, for those 20% you still need to go at depth and be prepared yourself for those. Okay, with this context in mind on the developer, now how we can prepare for it, right? So number one is, yes, as we said, right, you still would be asked to have a fundamental knowledge of any programming language or a framework, right? I'm going generic. Maybe half you would be on Java. Maybe a quick poll in the chat if you can simply write which language you preferably work on. Simply maybe paste Java, Python, .NET, or any other language. Okay, so I'm seeing Python, .NET, C, mashallah. Okay, two Python, Java. Okay, okay, one on JavaScript as well. Okay, nice. So as we know, mostly we work on these fundamental languages. So more and more data available for these languages, and that is where it actually helps us generate the data. But still, many a times it does not return the proper output, right? In terms of Chat GPT or Gen AI, we call that hallucination, right? Where it's a confident liar. You, that's what we basically call it, right? It says a lie so beautifully that even experienced developer can get uh, caught up by it, that it might be true unless you compile it or run it, right? So that's where your understanding of things would still be intact, right? So so of course one is you pick a particular language framework, or especially the engineering of programming or development. You need to go get to the fundamental levels of thing. Maybe you need to again brush off your concept of operating system, that helps you understand how memory management works, how computing works, how process works, how thread works, right? It could be on networking. You understand how packet actually transfers, right? How a networking design typically happens, right? So these fundamentals would still play a vital role in terms of understanding your depth. Second is the debugging skills. Still, it falls short at a lot of areas in terms of the debuggability of a particular problem. It helps you identify, understand a particular bug, understand a particular error, but what exactly could be the cause? It requires a human intuition, and that's something this generative AI does not have it as of now. So that's another area which it will really helps you pick it up, right? So you need to basically enhance your capability, core capability in terms of debugging a particular language or a programming skills. And last is, if you can't compete, of course in writing code it would be much faster in terms of spitting out code, but yeah, plugging it together and then working it out, you would be doing that, right? So consider it's like this, that it would be maybe a 6 months 1 year experienced developer who can help you write a certain part of your code, but plugging them together, and whether it is making sense or not, and or whether it is better for your use case or not, those decisions are still of yours. So that is why we say ki, okay, it would act as your assistant. Now, how many of you have already tried, apart from the first link, any other link which you have tried, apart from OpenAI or ChatGPT? Maybe you can put that in chat, that if any of you have tried Claude.ai, Meta.ai, Perplexity.ai, or any extensions, or have set up the Olama on your laptop. Anyone? Okay, nice. So Shoaib has tried. Okay. No, apart from ChatGPT. Apart from ChatGPT, if you've tried any other models. Okay, perfect. So yes, so basically you are at least aware of that. There are multiple options available. So just to walk you through, like this is the typical ChatGPT looks like, right? Where you can simply ask any questions and it will try to answer. Another is Claude.ai, which is also gives a very good results, and actually in compete and uh, have an edge on top of ChatGPT in many areas, especially in the reasoning capability of this model, especially Claude 3.5 Sonnet. Of course, this has but a very high limit, so a high rate limiting. Sorry, so maybe not be very frequently accessed for, especially under the free plan. but you can actually take the unlimited plan if you well versed with it. But you can ask any question and it would be helps you convert that into a particular language. I'll just show you. Let's say if I ask any question, I don't know anything about let's say in-depth deep learning or deep tech, but I can simply ask how to convert a PyTorch into Nemo, and it can give me those steps which I can let's try and then see if it is working or not. This is something is like an API based integration. We can ask here some questions, and whenever we'll get any scripts, we'll copy it, paste it on our code and do it. It actually requires me to work between my browser and a console, right? Like this. So I would be switching between these two. That Another option is you can actually get a coding assistant. So maybe there is Amazon Q Developer or a GitHub Copilot. These are the two leading tools right now in the market, which allows you to write code then and there in your browser and then simply ask like this. So if you see the video, right, you select a code and say, okay, can you help me write a unit test case for this? It would be able to generate that. Or explain me this code, right? It would be able to do that. Or if there is an error, you simply select it and right click and ask the what is this error is all about, where should I debug, how should I find a file. All those steps it would be able to help you get. Okay. Now, there is one more tool which I want you to keep in your kitty is perplexity.ai. This really helps in terms of searching across multiple web pages and able to get a consolidated answer in a particular format. So, for example, just to demonstrate the capability, I can simply ask, can you identify strength, or maybe I do a bit SWOT analysis between chat GPT 4o versus Claude.ai in a tabular format, right? What it does basically, it would work across multiple sites and automatically gives me a SWOT analysis on those areas, or build me a price comparison. It helped me do that as well. So this is called if you have followed Bloom taxonomy, this is basically level 3 or level 4 sometimes work what it is being done with these kind of a model. So it not only basically scan different resources, uh, it also identifies that what we are asking for. It tries to do a comparative analysis and able to put a report based on our ask, right? So this is something which is already being done. Okay, so just I was showing this example. So these are the different sites which can help you. And if you want to run offline, if your company wants, there are different models like CodeGamma and all, which is especially designed to run on your laptop. Of course, if it is at least 16 GB of your laptop with an at least integrated graphics, you would be able to run a proper machine between this. Okay, hope my screen is visible. I think yes. Okay. So let's have a look. We will go one by one. So if you are on your laptop, I would suggest open a separate browser window, and we will go into this chatgpt.com. Okay, let's go there and we'll do our first simple test how we can do it. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So, if it is the first time, it will ask you to register. You can use any of your Google account or any other personal accounts to start with. If you don't have a subscription, it would act also works in free, right? So, our what we are going to do is we will take this as an example. Imagine you are a data analyst working on a project to analyze a customer purchase pattern, right? You need to create a Python script that can process a large CSV file containing customer transaction data. We'll do some analysis and generate a report. So instead of writing this code from scratch, I decided to use a generative AI. What I need to do is, if this is my task, okay. So the first part, right? I am going to have a large CSV file, maybe by then one name. and which has some data. So I would be simply asking, okay, what are the total spends per customer? So if I want this only to be generated, so how shall I do it? So maybe we can write that as a prompt. Okay, I'll paste it. You can write it at your level. You got the problem, right? So let's try to have it. Okay, write a Python program which will take customer data in CSV format as input and tell me top 5 customer with their spend in July month. Okay, and it will write a code for me, and it will also tell me the steps of doing it. Okay, so for example, it does okay, first of all, for any analysis which it needs to do, I need to have a library, especially in Python, and it says okay, that is, let's say, panda, and then it reads the CSV file, read the date column, check whether it is July month, and sum by group by the customer ID and this. And then it also picks the top 5 items from it and print their names. This more or less it's works looks like fine, and it also gives me an example CSV data that it should have a customer ID, spend, and their dates. These 3 columns from the example side, right? But let's say you already have a format defined, right? So that's something what you need to do. You need to put in your input. So earlier, what I put, let's say this input. Now along with it, I would be actually passing key file format for customer data is, I'll say how it is, let's say underscore id. Okay, then I have customer id, then I have date. Okay, then I have let's say uh, spend amount. Okay, and I'll say discount as a column or something like that, and some other columns maybe if I want to add key region. Okay, and I did that. So this time I have put my own format actually, and it would be then making the changes accordingly. Okay, so typically it does that already, and I am able to get that similar things done, and it now it gets got me a data itself here. So this is how you can iterate. So another thing is, so that's how you can actually do it, and maybe I can add more things to it, and that's how you can do it. Anyone have tried it? How many of you tried? Can you simply raise your hand, or put it in the chat? Or now, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute, and uh, we can discuss.
Yeah,
Okay.
hi, sir. Farhan here.
Hi, Farhan.
Yeah, my question, I'm also in IT company. So my question is like in our real-time IT projects, we don't
Hmm.
have like this kind of simple programs, right? It is like kind of complicated, like
Correct.
complete
Correct.
projects here and there. So how can we
Sure.
use that? Right?
I think yes. So that's the topic for today, actually. So I wanted to start with basics, and then we'll come to the next onto this. Thank you. But yes, thank you
Thank
for highlighting that.
you.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. हाँ अनवर भाई.
Anwar here. Actually, my profile is DevOps. So, how to use in that AI tools in the DevOps?
Correct. So you can use a similar prompts, if especially for that as well. Let's say I say ki, okay, maybe I'm from AWS, so maybe I'll take okay, uh,
Mm-hmm.
create a SAM template with Python for above code to deploy as Lambda function. So it will help me do that as well. It gives me code for each file, and then I would be able to use this to deploy, right? Or also share a Terraform script for it. Only thing is, yes, we have not tested this script whether it works fine or not, because I work with SAM templates a lot. Terraform I have not worked, but that's something So it can help you for any of the language. We'll talk about how you can use it for the different things in that, and that's the benefit, right? So for example, I don't know much about, let's say, Terraform, right? But it was able to give me all these codes, right? And it tells me how should I create this framework, Terraform, and all. And it also tells me what are the scripts, how to deploy it, and everything basically part. And if it is certain steps are missing, something is not working, that's something which you again ask, it will tries to update that part to it. Okay. So it would be helping you on all the level. So
Yeah,
coming.
yeah, Jazakallah.
ठीक है. Okay, hope you guys have tried as one or the other use case. So I wanted to just show you how you can actually do this. Now, another part is thinking capacity. Okay, we'll touch base on that actually as a question. But again, two three things which you need to do while working with chat gpt, and that's our idea today, that what are the tips which you can use it so that you can get a real work, real problems to be solved, rather than these dummy demo which we are doing right now, right? Number thing, so we'll come back to maybe this multiple times. So many a time, what there are also certain problems with this Gen AI. Number one is hallucination. I don't. It spits out these code, right? I don't know whether really there is a this particular function is available or not. Maybe this reset index is available or not, right? Or two dictionary is available or not. You will only get to know once you are actually able to, let's say, get a once you actually tries to compile it or run it, right? Sometimes it happens that for complex cases it simply hallucinates, creates its own method or even a library, right? So maybe I don't know whether string IO library is there or not, right? So that's the hallucination part to it. So that's where you as a developer still would be part to it to validate it and all, right? It also tells me simply a wrong library or an API, right? So of course this helps you. Okay, developers are still needed, and we are safe in that particular perspective. But then how to use it, right? I think one question from Abdul Aziz is for web development, yes, you can use it even to generate HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? But again, and I think brother Absar was also telling about that if you simply generate your all projects just using ChatGPT, you may not develop your thinking capacity. So how you can use ChatGPT is as your mentor maybe. So where you wrote a code, and instead of you asking him, Help me write this code," you say, "Okay, okay, this is something which I wrote for this problem. Tell me, without sharing the full code, tell me what are the areas I should improve, or what are the area which I'm missing, or whether I'm doing right things or not." So that way you can improvise as a developer as well, and typically works with all the prominent programming or scripting languages, be it for web development, data science, even for Salesforce. If you are using Salesforce Apex loader codes and all, and even JavaScript, you will be able to get much answers from that. Coming back to this, so how to write prompts, right? So what we talk to these basically chat gpt is in a plain English format, right? There are models like Claude and all which also takes Hindi input as well, or even chat gpt, where instead of, let's say, I can simply write it कि मैं लिखूंगा कि ये मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, explain me again. So हाँ, वो हिंदी में भी वो आपको करके बताएगा, राइट? सो इफ़ यू आर हिंदी, तेलुगु और एनी अदर लैंग्वेजेस एज वेल, you will be able to get that help from some of the models, not all, at least some of them, right? Now, how to write proper prompts, right? So number one is a simple one prompt. What you would see. Let's say this is my prompt, where I say from you provide the following prompt. Say generate a Python script that does the following, and I'm giving step by step what I want. Can you tell me what I am exactly doing here from step 1 to 6? Maybe you can put it in chat. Anyone means what we are trying here. Okay, we are feeding instructions. Anyone wants to basically put any message in chat? So one thing what we are doing here is that we are giving step by step instructions, as said, right? Exactly what we need to do, right? So basically we are being very specific. What will be my file name? What are the columns it has, right? We are giving instruction what you would be doing from it, right? How it is going to do that, right? What is the final summary output file name, and in what format I am actually putting that out, right? So whenever you are working with chat gpt or basically generative ai, you need to be very specific. So this is very much critical in terms of writing, because whatever information you are not passing, it is going to assume, right? So as you saw last time, right? Typically when we started first here, uh, yeah, when we started first, it only considered just three columns, sorry: customer id, spend, and date. In real world you may be having 20 different columns, right? So how can you pass that as a format? So you need to specify that, right? Second, there could be different data formats which you would be using, so you have to be very specific what data format your application is having, right? Third, if I want this to be run only with panda, or write my own program to identify from that list, that's something I need to set that up upfront, right? So that becomes key what I need as a library. If not, then it would pick it by default, right? Fourth, for example, here it is saying ki, okay, do this in ascending order, right? One of the challenges, let's say if you have millions of data, sorting becomes a critical, right? So maybe you would be looking for some different idea there, instead of simply sorting and pull the first fifth row, right? So if you say ki I am having millions of record and even sorting would be a challenge, then it would be try to build some other programming part to it, right? So be specific, right? And those are the typical terms which we work whenever you work with the chat gpt or generative ai. Is number one, you have to provide a clear crisp instruction. Okay, you have to provide examples of how you can how you want a particular option to be, right? You have to be very specific in what exactly do you want and how do you want. If you want to use x library or y library, a particular version or particular method, you would be doing that, right? You also would be asking, if you have your own thought process, hey, this is how I want to do it, maybe either in a word format or as a pseudo code, you can pass that, right? So if you give those information additionally along with your basic question, that is something called prompt engineering, and that's something which you need to learn. There are different standard techniques are there which for the prompt engineering, which helps you get the work done. So as one of our brother was asking that this is a very simple use case, but maybe we can pick up any complex one as well and see how to solve that problem. There are two three things which we need to understand. We'll go bottom up. uh, Number one, when you work with your basically corporate code, or if you're working as a startup, right, your ip is very much critical, right? So you need to look for your company policy for using generative ai, right? It could be that it is not allowed to share your private code on the GenAI. So if you are pasting this code to any public link, that is something sometimes a violation of your company's protocol. So make sure that you are following that, right? Then either then your company would be having a private contract with, let's say, running it on maybe on aws, or maybe the specialized version of uh, generative AI models for your organization, so that your data is are not being leaked. So make sure that you know about those part. Second, as we were discussing this, right, more and more context you provide, right? So it will take it would be helpful for the development of the code. If you know that your rest of the code uses X library, you don't want that just for this particular code it should use Y library, right? So you would be setting that up. So you can provide ki, hey, for this particular code please use only this library. For, let's say, for image processing you are only wants to use OpenCV, right? That. Second, you can specify method name as well. Ki, hey, this is my class. I want this to be broken down into these 5 method, and this what each 5 method is going to do. Write a code. Then it would be help you write those codes as well. Okay. If there are certain identifier, maybe a license ID, maybe the version of Boto 3 and all, which you want to place in the code, right? You can specify that as well, right? If you have already written some sample code, you can pass that as well. So whatever additional information you pass, that something is being basically shared as the existing code. Okay. So with this as an example, maybe we'll come back to this example again. And again, for anyone, if you are in Java or .NET, you simply change the word from Python to your particular programming language, and we would be doing this. Okay, so this time I'll just copy the same prompts again. Maybe I'll pass the base prompt for everyone to see. Okay, we'll create another prompt. This time I'll pass additional method. Okay, I'll mention whatever additional information I want as part of this, right? And maybe I can say, okay, make it modular with class, okay, or oops concept. So this time I passed additional concepts and actually started using class automatically in Python. Right? By default, otherwise it was a simple programming language. And it then, because I have not passed all the method name, it actually created its own method what it could pick it up. Right? So from main method, it is calling processor and then it is doing this. Maybe just to give you an example, now I also want to add key. So what I was doing for a local file earlier, now I am asking ki this would be actually doing as a separate file. So now it is able to give me two different types of code, AWS utils.py and customer data processor.py. Whereas file in download is being written in S3 client as a class separately, and customer data processor is now basically using that here. Right? Now it is hard coding in the code. If I want to put that as a message, okay, now this also should be moved out into a property file, it would be able to do that. Right? So that's how you can do it. So this is called providing the context, right? Then comes the difference between zero shot and few shot. See, what is zero shot and few shot? Can anyone unmute and talk about it? Or maybe what is few shot? Anyone? So I'll just give you an example. So zero shot means whatever we asking, we are simply putting that as an idea. Few shot may we actually pass some of the examples as well that how my output would look like. For example, currently I'm only expecting this output in a simple customer ID. That's it, right? But I want, let's say, that in a JSON format, right? So I'll say, okay, uh, output should be in JSON format, and example so let's say I'll show you first this. So I said everything, but I said okay, output only, right? And what eventually what it is going to do, it is going to generate generate an output. Let's check how's the output what they're doing right now. So to JSON, they have converted the whole record into line false, right? But let's say that is only having top customers data only, right? So that's what they're doing. Okay, but instead of this, maybe I'll take the simpler example only to explain first. So let me start a few fresh message. I'll just paste the same message and say output should be in JSON format, and then I say example JSON format. I say sorry. Hmm. I specify my own format and say कि it should be like this कि customer underscore ID is equal to customer underscore ID. Second I want is total underscore spend and say here should be the total underscore spend. Okay, and then I'll say maybe the month. Okay, and this is the format. So if I pass one such example, right, it would be called one shot. If I pass another example, say कि with value, right? Oh, so let's say another example, I'll say कि another example, and that there I'll pass actually some number. Maybe I'll say that the numbers are 112233 and total spend is, let's say, 5540, and month name is, I'll say, July. Okay, I pass this. So what it is going to do based on these examples, you are not passing, sorry, this like this. Typically you would be passing all this information in a single prompt, right? So if you can start writing that, maybe writing this and then adding this, you need not to spend twice the call, but on the same call, then it is actually going to utilize and put these values and create my JSON accordingly, right? Customer spend month equal to July because that's in hard coded. Maybe so that's called one shot, two shot. So one shot, two shot, whenever you hear, it's nothing but an example of your output, what you want, right? So if you're passing, let's say five, six different examples of the same, that something is called few shot, or missing whatever the number you say, eight shot, seven shot, five shot, that way. Few shot is the shortcut for that. Zero shot where you don't pass any example. Few shot is where you actually pass the example. So if you're not getting proper results in your format, few shot is a good way, especially for data preparation. For input data type, output data examples, if you're writing a CSV, if you're generating test cases data, few shot is very much needed in those cases, but it helps a lot in terms of other examples as well. Okay, so maybe if you are solving a particular problem and you give some of the example ki, hey, this is how sine theta being calculated, or this is how cos, let's say x is calculated, it will consider these and automatically gives you better output. Next is called prompt chaining. Again, these are concepts which we already do, but we just don't understand, right? So prompt chaining is what we are doing here. Maybe I'll take the oldest example here. First, we started with simple. What we said, ki, okay, we simply wrote this thing, right? On top of it, whatever is the output is given, what it does internally, chat GPT, when we did next time when we added this, it takes this as well as the previous whatever we have written, combining that together creates the third call. When this third call happens, it will add all this output plus this additional input, right? And it generate this as an output, right? And this is how it goes. So basically, what I could say in simple word, that previous, you start with small, you start, because let's say if it does not understand, you can build on top of it. Okay, And what you do basically, you starts with a very small ask. Okay, simply, okay, we started with very small. Okay, just read a Python, find the top customers who spends in July month, and it first run that, build it. Then you say, okay, I should be able to pass month as a parameter, right? It would do that. Then I'll say, okay, I want number also to be dynamic, right? Then you say add exceptional handling, that if data is not present for a month, it should let's say fill it automatically, right? So this, you add input, previous prompt output plus this input goes together, and it does that. In these example, especially on ChatGPT, Claude.ai, in API call, this is being done by this UI itself, right? So this UI itself does. Yes, Akbar, you wanted to ask?
Sorry, wait, it was a mistake.
Okay. So basically this helps you do iterations on top of it to get to your answer, right? So this is the another trick which you can do. Third is chain of thought. Many a time, before even asking, let's say hypothetically you want, I don't know Java, right, but I know Python. So I got all this code now in Python, uh, but I don't know Java, right? So, or but I do have that code. So what I can do, I can say, okay, first let's do this only. So instead of sorry, let's start fresh. So let's say I want a Java code. So before directly start writing Java code, because I don't understand Java, I'll ask you, okay, write a pseudo code. How you are going, pseudocode program which will take input this and this, right? So what it is then going to tell me, it tells me what are the steps which is going to do, right? So if you understand this, what it says, it's this is my logic, how I'm going to write. Okay, may I go, I will take an input as a CSV, I'll generate an output in JSON format for top customer, I'll read a CSV, I'll open, create a list, parse that CSV file for each row, get the data. If month is July, store it separately, sort this list, pull the top five and do this, right? This is my pseudocode. Now I can understand this because maybe I don't know Java or a C, right? So at least this is something which I'm clear, but I want to make a change. This becomes an easy, I can copy this and maybe I'll start a fresh prompt to make it happen. Okay, instead of this mechanism, okay, write a CSV file, open the CSV, create a list. I want to change this to make it more, let's say, sophisticated. Okay, sorting I don't want, right? So I'll simply say add the record to July list. Okay, create, uh, add new entry in the list automatically, so they remain sorted. Got it? So what I did basically, I made one step change. Key, whenever they make an entry in the July list, it should be sorted, right? So eventually now this is my script. For above pseudocode, convert it into Java code. Okay? So now it is going to do, it will do the rest of the things which I'm not worried about right now is, but it will do that. So for example, it is taking customer as an array list, it's taking July month, it is adding a record in this month, right? And then it is doing sorting and comparing and adding it, right? That way. So it follows that and it will take based on that, right?
Hello, sir, Farhan here.
हाँ हाँ Farhan,
Yeah,
बोलिए.
one question.
Hmm.
Like when we are using, suppose this kind, this codes, right? So, is
Hmm.
it like not a good practice to use that in our office codes, or like we can use it, not an issue?
You can use it in your office, but again, as we said earlier, right, sometimes your company don't allow you to basically paste your company internal code onto this, right?
Yeah,
Vice
yeah,
versa, it is okay. Let's say you generate something all here in ChatGPT and then you simply paste it back. I think that is okay, but reverse is not allowed even in
yeah.
certain companies. especially if you're working on algorithms, they don't want you to write algorithm with the help of GPT because it can pick some of the copyrighted code, let's say, from some other library, and that may create a problem. But yes,
Correct.
in typical term, pasting your code to this is a challenge, but copying from here to internal is not a challenge.
Okay.
That,
So my question here was, suppose we are copying this code to our company code, right? So I
yeah.
just like how we have like complete in any research, like it will go and search all the databases if there is any copied code like that. Nothing will be scanned like that.
So that would be a separate tool, let's say, taken by your company, but not. This is something is not provided by the GPT as of now.
Okay.
There
Okay.
could be
At least the
something.
logic part we can take it. Then
Correct.
just minor changes we can do it.
Yes, that's something which you can do. And that's why, let's
Thank you.
say, this coding assistant like Copilot or AWS Amazon Code Q, I'll show you here as well. Like, say, we use this, right? So I can, same thing, I can do it here itself so that I don't have to go to browser. So maybe I'll simply paste it here in the chat, and it will allow me to get the answer that way. And this is might be my code. So I can actually, it also tries to explain me, I can copy it maybe and paste it as a new file. So this is my code. So it automatically works here itself, so I can do that. Or mostly these also have, if you have written key, write a unit test case for above code, and it will automatically starts writing the code. So that is also there basically. Okay. So difference between prompt chaining and chain of thought is that you either you have your own thought, right, or you ask let's say generative AI to have their explain that what are their thoughts. For example, in this demo what we shown here, right, so that's what we asked. Sorry, it's one step here. Okay, don't generate a final direct code. I want you to first tell me what is your thought, right? And then I can use that thought to generate the answer. So this helps you a lot in terms of making a minor tweaks. Many a time what happens is, let's say the thought itself is wrong, then we do multiple iteration, and this does not work or it does not give you the proper answer, right? Uh, so that would be a problem. So better is that it is, especially if you're working on a real world application, as somebody was asking, right, uh, sample code is okay, but how about this particular path? So you can do that, right? You can pass the context ki, hey, I always use a DAO service, especially for Java developers here or .NET. You always follow DAO layer and a service layer and a web layer as a three separate code. Whatever function I want you to add, consider these three layer and give me method for each. You can do that. You can pass your own file as a context always. If you have some sample, you can use that too for the base. And as the question being asked by Farhan, right? So Amazon Q is a co-pilot which you can add as a plugin inside the VS Code itself, right? So if you simply ask any questions here, you will be able to get an answer directly here from that. Okay. So it becomes an easy to simply copy paste. Another is GitHub Copilot. So either of that you can use. So because here from here to there, I would be requiring a copy paste. That is not there. So for example, here you can simply select a code and say, hey, may Amazon Q explain this code, or I can say refactor it, or if there is a bug, I can select that line and say fix it, right? Or I can say optimize this, right? Or I can pass this as a context and add my question to it. Break down into function. So you can pass that. So you need not to write it manually. It will be there, and I can say inserted cursor. Then all the code has been coming there. So for one function got broken down into two. But if you That's why better practice is what first you do. We'll talk about that. That first you should design this, because that's how we do as a developer as well, right? कि मुझे ये 5 function चाहिए या ये class है, each class would have these function, or get help from ChatGPT or generative AI on that level first, right? Then based on that, then you come to maybe uh, asking generative AI कि develop method for this where read CSV does this, filter row by age does this, and this being done by that, right? So that way, or you write and simply interface, right, and ask it to implement. So that becomes a good practice, so that you will have because in that case generative AI needs to only work one by one on a smaller case, right, and then you build on top of it. So that becomes an easy way to do it. Okay, so that is called chain of thought. So you design thought first, and then chain your questions based on that. Prompt chaining is where you starts with small, you build on top of it, iterating on top of it, right? Few shot is where you put up examples for how you want a particular output, or how would be examples of certain input, or what could be the exceptions look like, all those cases. Provide context where you put what particular library you want to use, what particular library you don't want to use, right? For example, just to showcase on the older example itself, I'll simply say don't use panda. So it would try to build it on something else. So it uses collection, default dictionary, blah blah blah. Not using Python data manipulation. It is done that, right? So that's up to you. So that's how you pass the context, right? Now, how to get help? Be a better writer. So, of course, you need to do spoon food a lot to these models, right? If you ask them to generate a project for me, they are not able to do that, right? But if you ask me, ki I'm going to, let's say, maybe we'll start afresh for a larger project, right? We are building, let's say, doctor patient app in .NET Core for backend API, write all code. Let's say if I do this, right, it will say, it would try to do, yeah, we can do this, and it would try to do everything basically, but many a time it misses a lot of things which is, let's say, not needed, right? So instead of directly jumping onto the final answer, you can go step by step, spoon feed. Let's say we are building this, what all possible APIs we should think of. Let's say I don't even have that. So I'll start with this as a question first. So first, let's understand this, right? These are the things what it is doing. But if you feel that there should be more, there should be less, this or that, you update on that, right? Then for each, let's say for this one, right? Let's say I say, okay, I want this to be implement this in .NET Core. Sorry, .NET Core, but I think it should explain that. See, for that, just for that apartment part, now it is able to give me a model, and it is able to give me a module and this. More smaller task you ask it to do, it will do better job. If you try to combine 3 4 things together, it would fail, or it would hallucinate in one or the other. So it's better always you start big, but break it down your task, do task one by one, merge it together, and that's where this code ID integration becomes much easier, because that's like a one click integration. If there is an error, you automatically fix it up that way. Okay, so that's the another thing which I would say. So for example, it says error handling, blah blah blah, but this is something you would be adding on top of it. Okay, so that's called better writer means learn spoon feeding. You need to do spoon feeding. Okay, these are my APIs. This is the method. This is the input. This is the output. This is the rate limiting. This is this. How much ever context you can provide, better your results will be. Number one. Okay. Second, remove all words which are not necessary. Many a time we simply copy paste a large one which are not having the relevant example. That will prone to more hallucination in those cases. So better that you remove all those words which is not needed. Okay. Third is break down your task and pass one by one. So for example, this as we have said, okay, first we generated all the API list and then we do one by one for each, right? For example, most of the Java .NET code gives you a boilerplate code already, so you don't need to rebuild that every time, right? Especially that gives you authentication, everything by default. On top of it, I just want, let's say, how to write this in my service layer, it would do that, right? Those are the things which you can get help here, because that would be much faster in your case as well. Okay, or you don't know how to create a packaging this thing as a DevOps, so that's something which you can ask, and then that's something which you will be able to generate it. Okay, that's the another tips which I would like you to do. Fourth is improvise. So many a time, before even writing code, you, how many of you know TDD, test driven development? Okay, so TDD, what it says basically that you need to first have test case being written, and then start working on code. This helps a lot if you're working with GenAI. So see, now with GenAI you can also write a test case. Let's say I'll say write a test case for this same API. Okay, so what it do basically, for the same, it generates a test case for me. Okay, so I got this test case. Okay, how to test it and all. Benefit of this would be, if I make my test case works first, then it is, as soon as I put my code copy pasted and try to run the test case, it will tell me whether code generated is actually according to the test cases or not, right? So this helps me a lot in terms of improvising myself, that hey, how to do it. So instead of directly jumping on to getting the code, you can generate the test case first, and then you get the code. Okay, and so this is the one improvisation tips. We'll talk about the others part as well. Now this is, we'll talk about if you're what types of code you're writing, and we'll talk about tips for each of these segments. Okay, tips for writing improving existing code, tips for writing unit test cases, tips for the documentation, tips for the DevOps, tips at the project level. Okay, so we'll start with writing for the algorithms. For writing the algorithm, it's always better, typically is use chain of thought, or basically ask them to generate a step by step pseudo code for that, right? Or even if you ask, let's say in the same example which we did last time, right, where we asked for steps. Yeah, where was that? So you get a flow. In this case, it is kind of a simple direct flow. So you would be understanding that, okay, this is the flow, this is how I'm going to do it. But if there are conditional groups, loop and all, it's better to visualize it, right? So with the text as well, you can get a visualization here. So this becomes an easy way to get first algorithm sorted. So you ask, okay, let's work on the flow diagram first, or then you ask it to tweak it here itself. Once you refine your overall flow diagram, if it is becoming very complex, break it down into method by method, simple programming what we do, and then get a flow diagram perfected for each of the flow. Okay, especially for writing algorithms or functions, right? So that's number one thing what you need to do. Don't directly start jumping onto the problem and then say कि, okay, code सही नहीं आ रहा है, or this is not helping me, I have to do everything from scratch. Better to at least sort out this part first. So if you get this thing sorted, once it works fine, then on top of it simply add कि, hey, with this flow diagram for this method generated, if it, let's say this is larger, right, uh, break it down as separate to function and give me flow diagram for each. Simple. Same way, and now I'm breaking it down so that it won't be, let's say, so large of a function. So one flow is this and another flow is this. So get into that practice. If you have your own predefined connotation for this flow diagram, explain that. Ki, hey, this is what I'm thinking of. Maybe you can pass this as an input very easily, right? And you can create this. Even not like this, you can say, okay, start. Then I would be doing this. Then I would be doing this. Then I would be doing this. And say, ki, if you can pass, let's say, condition here, and uh, then this, else this, something like this. Also, you can design it in a single line and pass that as a parameter. So this is where you can if put effort in terms of passing those context to this code. And once you have a clear flow diagram or a clear let's say process understood, or a thought process understood, then you ask to generate a code that would be very much working. Okay, so that's the another thing which you would be doing. uh, so asking LLM ki tum kya kar rahe ho, you can get that step by step solve as well, right? So for example, maybe not for this, maybe simple math to make it understand. Solve quadratic equation, which we all know, right? EQ equation 9 plus 81 ka square. Or maybe I'll say, to make it more better, if I do this, right, the answer could be it uses a bit of basic steps. But if I say it tries to directly solve it in this way. So that I am explaining someone, right? So this is like a simple math what it does. But here we are saying कि ये formula है, a पे place किया, b पे place किया, a cube is this much, 3a2b is this much, 3a2b is this much, b3 is this much, adding all together is this much. So this is like a chain of thought. So for example, I always wants to go through this particular model. So that's my chain of thought, instead of solving internally first and then solving it. So this is how also depends on the coding style as well. I have you wants to follow a particular set of instruction, then prepare that, right? So it is a good practice that you create a text folder inside your project, maybe something like this, prompt engineering, and then whatever you did in past, please make a copy of that. Because I think if you commit it along with the Git as well, this would be better, so that if anyone wants to tweak it, unit, or understand it, you will be able to get that, right? So this is some practice which people follow now, right? And ask for iterations. So I'll give you an example. Any questions? Let me ask that. Okay, no questions. Okay, so we'll jump onto this as a workshop. So one of the challenge what we had is, uh, maybe I'll pass here. Just a moment. So this is something was one of our live project which we did, and this is something has been asked by the customer, and we wanted to develop it. So this follows basically prompt chaining and chain of thought to develop this, right? So objective was that one of the program what we worked is had an S3 bucket, or basically if you don't know, it's like a folder. Folder can have multiple subfolders internally, right? And each folder would be having PDF or and many other files as well. Like it's a directory folder, whatever you want to call it, which can have multiple folder inside, and there could be file. Our objective was to pick only the PDF from that. And let's say if PDF has 10 files, I want sorry, if one PDF has 10 pages, I wanted to create 10 different PDF out, each with one page. So if a 10 page PDF will get converted into 10 one page PDF. Okay, that was the objective. So how we did it? So this is the power of prompt chaining, and this was kind of a real use case. I'll talk about these two, and I want you to then implement this at your end, maybe in the code as well. You will pick one example which you can then solve it at your end. So we started with a simple prompts. Okay, Python scripts to create multiple single page this with input and output as a context. I have already said. I'll say if people don't know about AWS cloud, don't worry. S3 bucket is like a folder, right? Or maybe you can say it's a C drive, right? And let's say target folder is the D drive slash a path, right? So that's how it is. So it's like I'm passing a directory and a folder from where I should start picking up, and the source PDF file. So I started with one file first. कि मैंने क्या बोला कि एक S3 बकेट के अंदर एक फोल्डर के अंदर एक फाइल है, और उसको आपको मल्टी पेज में ब्रेक करना है। तो उसने मेरे को बोला कि PDF 5 PDF लगेगा, ये ब्रेक करेंगे और ये मुझे एक आउटपुट दे देता है कि ये ठीक है। मैंने उसको रन किया, मुझे ये एरर आया, ठीक है। आई एम जस्ट वॉकिंग यू थ्रू, आई पास इट ऑन फॉर एवरीवन टू लुक एट लेटर। ये मुझे एक एरर आया उसमें कि पीडीएफ तो डेप्रिकेटेड मेथड डाला है, दिस इज लाइक प्योर प्ले हेलुसिनेशन, बट उसने एग्जांपल में ये भी था। देन इट अपग्रेडेड दैट लाइब्रेरी एज वेल। अगले एग्जांपल में मुझे अपग्रेडेड लाइब्रेरी मिल गई। तो फिर मैंने क्या किया कि यार प्रॉब्लम क्या हो रहा था ना कि फाइल के नाम में कुछ अगर स्पेशल कैरेक्टर्स हैं जो S3 के कंपैटिबल नेम्स में नहीं हो सकते, ठीक है, कि लेट्स से कैपिटल के लेटर नहीं होंगे, तो मुझे क्या करना था, फाइल के नाम बदलने पड़ रहे थे। तो मैंने क्या किया, वो एक स्मॉल मेथड बनाया कि क्रिएट S3 फोल्डर का नाम मैं चेंज करूँगा खुद से, कि अगर उसमें कोई भी स्पेशल कैरेक्टर्स हैं तो उसको रिप्लेस कर दिया जाए विथ अंडरस्कोर, ठीक है, और बाकी जो भी कैरेक्टर है सबको बेस में कन्वर्ट कर दिया जाए। तो मैंने एक उसका मेथड बना लिया, ठीक है। मैंने बोला उसमें, क्योंकि उसने हेलुसिनेट क्या किया, उसने फिर भी कैपिटल लेटर को वैसे ही रखा था। फिर मैंने बोला कि सबको ऑल स्मॉल ही करें, और अंडरस्कोर नहीं चाहिए था मुझे, हाइफन चाहिए था, तो इट चेंजेस दैट रेगुलर एक्सप्रेशन। ओके, होप दिस इज क्लियर टिल नाउ for anyone has any doubt, they can unmute and talk. ओके, सो इट जनरेटेड दिस, ठीक है। तो मैंने एक एक स्टेप्स पे गया, उसके बाद मैंने बोला कि मुझे दूसरा मेथड चाहिए। अब मैं क्या करूँगा ना, जो पिछला मेथड था कि जिसमें वो अब उसको मैं पूरी बकेट का एक फोल्डर पास कर दूँ जिसमें इट कैन स्कैन द होल फोल्डर जस्ट फॉर PDF फाइल एंड कॉल प्रीवियसली जनरेटेड स्प्लिट PDF फंक्शन, ठीक है। तो अब क्या हो गया, पहले मैंने सिर्फ एक PDF के लिए किया, फिर मैंने बोला कि अब मैं पूरा सोर्स फोल्डर पास करूँ, वो वाला मेथड जनरेट करके दो। तो उसने क्या किया, स्प्लिट PDF का कोड एज इज रखा, ये एक्स्ट्रा जनरेट कर दिया, ठीक है। और फिर यहाँ से वो पास करता है उसको स्कैन एंड स्प्लिट PDF को, ठीक है। तो अब ये क्या करता है, कंटेंट के अंदर फाइल की से सर्च मारता है कि जिसके एंड में PDF रहेगा, तो उसको लेकर हर फाइल के लिए इंडिविजुअली स्प्लिट PDF को कॉल करता है, ठीक है। दूसरा स्टेप हो गया। अब मुझे चाहिए था कि प्रॉब्लम क्या था कि अगर मैं एक को बार बार जनरेट करूँगा, राइट, तो ऐसा हो सकता है कि लेट्स से मेरी फाइल का नाम है test.pdf, तो मेरा फोल्डर का नाम वो क्या बना रहा था कि टेस्ट के अंदर देर आर PDF। तो मैं बोला कि एक रैंडमली एक 4 डिजिट का अल्फा न्यूमेरिक एडिशनल हो जाए, ताकि हर बार जो भी बकेट नेम जनरेट होगी ना, दैट वुड बी यूनिक। वो क्या कर रहा था कि अब ये होता था, उसके बाद वो रैंडम 4 डिजिट की स्ट्रिंग ऐड करके फोल्डर का नाम ऐसे बनाता था, ठीक है। जैसे अगर एग्जाम्पल डॉक्यूमेंट बनेगा, तो एग्जाम्पल डॉक्यूमेंट को जब वो स्प्लिट मारना शुरू करता था, तो एग्जाम्पल हाइफन डॉक्यूमेंट हाइफन ABCD करके एक फोल्डर बनता था। उससे क्या होता था कि अगर एग्जाम्पल डॉक्यूमेंट नाम का पहले से ही फोल्डर है तो उसकी फाइल रिप्लेस नहीं हो जाएगी, राइट। सो दैट्स समथिंग, सो दिस इज व्हाट वी डिड, राइट। एंड देन वी डिड मोर ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट, कि मुझे इसमें कुछ ट्वीक्स कराने थे, क्रेडेंशियल्स को बाहर ले जाने थे, वैसे करके। बट अगर ये मैं खुद से लिखने बैठता तो शायद पूरा दिन लग जाता, बट दिस अलाउड मी टू डू दिस विद इन 2 आवर्स। और हमने ये बनाया और कस्टमर को दे भी दिया, राइट? ठीक है, I'll tell another example. Maybe this is something which I'll want you to now generate. ठीक है, कि let's say you are building an app, or whatever technology you are building, you need to do three things. कि let me write a small line, write a So I want all of you to think about writing a program which will read one resume from the PDF file, which will parse this information कि उससे नाम निकाले, मोबाइल नंबर, लोकेशन, ईयर ऑफ एक्सपीरियंस, करंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एंड करंट रोल, ये मुझे डेटा सिंपल वो प्रिंट करे, राइट? So anyone wants to think about how should we do it, or anyone wants to take a lead here? और क्योंकि रिज्यूमे है, पीडीएफ फॉर्मेट में है, तो कुछ कहीं भी डेटा कैसा भी हो सकता है, तो हाउ वुड यू थिंक वी शुड सॉल्व दिस? एनीवन? ठीक है, एक एक करके पूछते हैं कि हाँ
Do we need to take chat GPT for this, or
हाँ, यू कैन यूज चैट जीपीटी, और यू कैन यूज एनीथिंग. लेट्स से दिस इज अ प्रॉब्लम कि आपके मैनेजर ने या आपके टेक लीड ने आपको बोला कि इसका एक फंक्शन लिखना है. हाउ वुड यू बेसिकली टैकल दिस प्रॉब्लम? How would you break it
Okay.
down? How would you think about it? What would be your thought process?
I think first of all we should think about like sort of like first need to get the flow that how it is solving the problem.
Okay.
And to get more clarity on that, we'll check for the language that which we are going to prefer.
Correct. So that's key. Good. You would be designing your algorithm first for this, right?
Yes, and then we'll check the flow diagram that to make more clarity with how it's going to process, how it's going to pass the fields and all from
Okay.
the.
Okay. So good or bad thing is this is something which I pick this problem right now in here itself. So let's see how ChatGPT reacts, and maybe we can also pass now the same problem into cloud as well. Cloud as well, sorry. Okay. So I gave both same problem to both. Okay. Let's see what's their analysis at first step. So इसने क्या किया कि this said कि by default, right? Because we have not done any tweaking. Let's see how it comes. So इसने मुझे बोला कि they are using two library, PyMU PDF for reading PDFs and RE for regular expression. तो मतलब अगर हम ये ऊपर का पढ़ लें तो इससे ये आइडिया लग जाएगा कि they are not using any AI services. They are only thinking about regular expression and reading and parsing PDF in that line. Okay. Example is ये अब ये कोड क्या है मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा, तो I'll ask कि can you show me pseudocode and regex for each step. ठीक है, तो उसने मेरे को अब वो बताएगा कि जो जो मुझे काम की चीज़ है, तो वो क्या ढूंढ रहा है पैटर्न, नेम कॉलन मिलेगा ना कहीं पे भी, तो वो उसको समझेगा कि ये नाम है. मोबाइल नंबर के लिए वो +1 2 3 4 करके कुछ पैटर्न मिलेगा तो उससे निकालेगा. लोकेशन के लिए भी वो इस पे रिलाई कर रहा है, राइट? ईयर ऑफ एक्सपीरियंस में भी वो ऐसा कुछ ढूंढ रहा है, करंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में वैसा कुछ ढूंढ रहा है. सो यू थिंकिंग, यू आर गेटिंग इट, फॉर इन दिस पर्टिकुलर केस मोस्ट ऑफ दिस वुड फेल, राइट? बिकॉज कोई भी अपने रिज्यूमे में या इस पे ऐसा नहीं लिखता है, राइट? अब आप,
फॉर्मेटिंग भी बहुत डिफरेंट डिफरेंट रहता है, राइट? लाइक
करेक्ट, गुड पॉइंट. मतलब फॉर्मेटिंग से आप सीधा पता नहीं लगा सकते. चलो मोबाइल नंबर के लिए आई गिव इट, की ठीक है, मोबाइल नंबर ऐसे पता लग सकता है कि
बट
भाई.
नंबर में समटाइम्स दे यूज अ कॉन्टैक्ट नंबर एज वेल, लाइक इन
समटाइम्स आई यूज कॉन्टैक्ट नंबर. नहीं, मैं ये बोल रहा हूँ कि जैसे रेगुलर एक्सप्रेशन से सिर्फ पता लगाना है तो खाली जब 10 डिजिट मिल गए, बट किसी के नंबर में बीच में हाइफन होगा, स्पेस होगा, डॉट होगा, हमें वो सारी चीज़ें एडअप करनी है, राइट? इसमें फिर तो हम यहाँ पे वैसे उसको ट्विक कर सकते हैं. ये तो शॉर्ट शॉर्ट नहीं चलेगा. लोकेशन के लिए भी नहीं चलेगा क्योंकि कोई ऐसा लिखता नहीं है. कोई बोलेगा होम एड्रेस, करंट एड्रेस,
परमानेंट.
सिचुएटेड, ब्ला ब्ला ब्ला, कुछ भी हो सकता है, राइट? या फिर टिपिकल वर्डिंग्स, राइट? ठीक है, करंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए कैसे पता लगा है?
आई थिंक तो जो डेट देता है लाइक 2022
वेरी गुड. If you are searching for this year, you can say कि okay, either you look for the 2024 मिले या currently working at या working now, ऐसे words के साथ में आप उसको पार्स कर सकते हैं, राइट? सो आइडिया इज पहले आप यहीं पे से ही काम शुरू करिए कि आप इसके लिए हर एक स्टेप्स के लिए प्रॉपर रेगुलर एक्सप्रेशन बिल्डअप करिए, या 3-4 बनाइए कि ये भी हो सकता है, ये भी हो सकता है, ये भी हो सकता है, ये भी हो सकता है. उनमें से फिर जो मिले आप उसको पिक कर सकते हैं, करेक्ट? So that's how you can first get for each steps that how the logic is being done, and that's how you sort it, right? यहाँ देखते हैं क्या किया इन्होंने. इन्होंने क्या किया, पाई पीडीएफ यूज़ किया, ये भी रेगुलर एक्सप्रेशन मोड पे गए. इन्होंने कोड का देखो, कोडिंग का स्टाइल दोनों का वैसे अलग है. इन लोगों ने कोड किया लाइन बाय लाइन, और जहाँ पे भी जो रेगुलर एक्सप्रेशन है वहाँ डाला है. यहाँ पे उसने सारे पहले ही दे दिए, एक टिपिकली जैसे हम कोड करते हैं उस टाइम के हिसाब से, और एक प्रॉपर फॉर्मेट में भी डेटा दे दिया उसने. रिज्यूमे को रीड कर रहे हैं, हर एक का नेम पैटर्न निकाला, मोबाइल का पैटर्न निकाला. इसने बल्कि ये भी कंसिडर किया कि डॉट वगैरह अभी क्या है, ये इतना भारी लिखा है, ये मुझे समझेगा नहीं. तो दिस इज ऑल्सो यू कैन यूज इट हियर कि हाँ, मतलब एक्सप्लेन दिस टू मी एंड दिस नहीं. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल अब वो बताएगा कि एग्जैक्टली क्या करना चाह रहा है ये, राइट? अब मे बी अभी भी नहीं समझा तो मैं बोलूँगा व्हाट आई कैन यूज इट फॉर. सो डेटा, ये तो देखो ऐसा हेलुसिनेट करता है जब मेरे कुछ काम करेंगे, बट हाँ ये किसने बोला, कॉन्टैक्ट मैनेजमेंट के हिसाब से शायद ये काम आ जाए, ठीक है? तो उस हिसाब से कि इज़ अ वैलिड फ़ोन नंबर, तो ये सेम वो काम आ जाएगा. तो आई थिंक दिस इज़ गुड, राइट? इसने यहाँ पे लोकेशन पैटर्न को कैसे किया है इसने तो ए बी सी डी और लास्ट में 2 डिजिट का कोड ये यूएस के हिसाब से किया, तो इंडिया में काम नहीं करेगा, राइट? एक्सपीरियंस पैटर्न में उसने ईयर्स के साथ ढूंढा है, या फिर एक्सपीरियंस के साथ ढूंढा है. सो आपने देखा कि क्लॉड का कोड एक्चुअली जो आपने बोला ना मुश्ताक, वो थोड़ा थोड़ा उसको फॉलो कर रहा है कि शायद ईयर्स के साथ लिखा हुआ रहेगा या एक्सपीरियंस वर्ड के साथ लिखा रहेगा, राइट? ऑर्गेनाइजेशन रोल पैटर्न के लिए भी उसने दिमाग लगाया कि करंट हो सकता है, प्रेजेंट हो सकता है, करंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, करंट कंपनी, करंट एम्प्लॉयर, प्रेजेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, प्रेजेंट कंपनी, प्रेजेंट एम्प्लॉयर, और साथ में रोल या पोजीशन ऐसा कुछ लिखा हुआ आएगा, तो उसके बीच में से आई कैन पुल दिस इंफॉर्मेशन. सो दिस इज मतलब दिस इज मोर काइंड ऑफ मोर ऑन द राइट अप्रोच, बट ये ठीक है. बट अभी अभी जैसे हमने बोला हम सीधा इस पर जंप कर गए. आई कुड कांट आई यूज एनी थर्ड पार्टी AI API फॉर दिस, ठीक है? तो आई कैन आस्क, राइट? सो अभी तो ये एक्चुअली, तो इसने बताया कि क्या यूज़ कर सकते हैं, तो इसने अभी गूगल गूगल फर्स्ट पिक किया, तो गूगल से वो बोल रहा है न्यूरल से इट कैन एनालाइज एंड फाइंड आउट एंटिटीज ऑटोमेटिक, ठीक है? बट मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि आई वांट टू यूज अमेजोन एक्सट्रैक्ट, सो इट विल चेंज द कोड एंड इट विल अपडेट मी अकॉर्डिंगली कि अभी अगर उससे मुझे रीड करना है तो कैसे करेगा. तो उसने फ़ोन नंबर के लिए किया, इसके लिए किया, ठीक है? बट बाकी चीज़ों के लिए वो भूल गया अभी, क्योंकि वो कॉन्टेक्स्ट में प्रॉपर नहीं गया ना, बीच में से हमने ब्रेक कर दिया था कॉन्टेक्स्ट। इसके लिए आपको अलग अलग ही थ्रेड बनाने चाहिए जब भी आप करें, और बाद में जब काम हो जाए तो डिलीट कर दें, ठीक है। बट यू गॉट दी ओवरऑल इनपुट कि दिस दिस इज़ वन वे ऑफ डीलिंग थिंग्स कि आप फर्स्ट सबसे पहले आपको अपना एल्गोरिथम सॉर्ट आउट करना, आपका अप्रोच सेट करना। डिसीजन मेकर अभी भी आप ही हैं, राइट। आपको ये सेट करना है कि क्या स्टाइल यूज़ करना है, किस तरीके से करना है, पार्सर करना है या कोई एपीआई यूज़ करना है। सो इसने उसको किया और उसने हर एक को फॉर्म का, उसने सीधा फॉर्म टेबल वगैरह यूज़ करके वो सारी चीज़ें सेट कर दी, ठीक है। तो ये उसका स्टाइल से उसने निकाल लिया कि अगर मैं एक बार ट्रेन कर दूंगा फॉर्म टेबल करके, टेक्स्ट टैग का एक कॉन्सेप्ट होता है कि आप पीडीएफ डालिए, उसमें मार्क कर दो 4-5 रिज्यूमे में कि देखो नाम ऐसी जगह होता है, ईमेल यहाँ होता है, करंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऐसी होती है, एंड इट विल ट्राई टू डिटेक्ट इट ऑटोमेटिकली विद द पावर ऑफ एआई, राइट। और this is another powerful thing. So even, and this is actually to develop on top of, let's say, Claude API, right? So what does this do? आप prompt में ही पास करते हो कि बस ये मेरा रिज्यूमे है, ये पीडीएफ अटैच कर दो और पीडीएफ पे ही मुझे क्वेश्चन कर दो। तो हमने 3 अप्रोच अलग अलग सोचे और फिर जो मुझे अप्रोच सबसे बेस्ट लगा मैं उसके बेसिस पे उसको आगे बढ़ा दूँ, ठीक है। सो दैट्स व्हाट आई वांटेड टू से कि देयर कुड बी डिफरेंट वेज। you need to take those decision early on कि what you want to use, whether you want to use one approach, if any approach you need to set up what would be the algorithm तक जाइए। उसके बाद थर्ड स्टेप इज दैट वेर यू वुड जनरेट द मेथड, राइट। या सिंपल भाषा में बोले तो इंटरफेस, जनरेट दोज इंटरफेसेस फर्स्ट कि ये मेरी क्लास होगी, उसमें ये मेथड्स होंगे, देन ओनली आस्क generative AI to generate code for you, okay। So that's the approach actually, okay। I think shall we, so 1 2 3 4 5 6, there are more steps actually needed. We can take a break now and we can continue next week, or do you want me to continue for another 30 minutes? Put your vote in the chat. Anyone who wants to take a break now? Okay. Okay, so what we'll do basically, we'll continue till 12:30, right? And then we will break for this. And there is 1 hour more work left, so it's better to do it next time. And meanwhile, we'll give you certain tasks which you can do it at your end, maybe for your own projects and all, so that you can by the time would be better equipped, and then we can have more Q&A on that. Okay.
Irshad
Sorry.
bhai, I think it's going good. We can spend more time next week. I think that will be much better. You can give some assignments, some homework kind of a thing, so that they can practice and we can have more advanced next week. So this has
Sure,
been
sure.
a
So
long
I'll
time now.
complete this slide and then we'll take a break. Okay.
Yeah, then
Break.
we can close for today. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. So we talked about writing one function code. What we need to do, again, you need to understand the prototype pseudocode of that algorithm, get a step-by-step definition of how you are going to do, and then iterate on top. Right. Then what if the code is already written in your existing project, right? You can take help in terms of getting an explanation of code, ठीक है। आपको केटी नहीं मिला, बट अगर आपको केटी लेना है तो जेन आई कैन हेल्प, राइट। एटलीस्ट फंक्शन बाय फंक्शन, मेथड बाय मेथड, क्लास बाय क्लास क्या हो रहा है वो आप पता लगा सकते हो, राइट। सो एक्सप्लेन योर कोड, ऑब्जेक्टिव एंड ईज। सो इफ यू वांट्स टू बेसिकली राइट एनी वन मोर फंक्शन इन द सेम कोड, आपको पूरी की पूरी करंट क्लास या करंट कोड भेजना पड़ेगा और उसको बोलना पड़ेगा इसमें मुझे ये फंक्शन एक ऐड करना है जिसका ऑब्जेक्टिव ये है। ठीक है। तो मतलब आपको एग्जिस्टिंग पूरा का पूरा क्लास भेजनी है, ऑब्जेक्टिव बताना है और फंक्शन बताना है। अगर वो किसी को और को कॉल वॉल करना चाहता है तो आपको वो भी स्पेसिफाई करना है कि भाई ये 4 मेथड दूसरी क्लास में है जो ये काम करते हैं, वो भी आपको यूज़ करना है, ठीक है। वो आप सूडो कोड के थ्रू बता सकते हैं या एक बार लिखने में बता सकते हैं एंड ऑल। इफ़ यू आर यूजिंग IDE लाइक दिस, इट कैन टेक दैट एज अ कॉन्टेक्स्ट डायरेक्टली, ठीक है। आप सिंपल सारी डायरेक्टरी स्ट्रक्चर पास कर सकते हो कि दिस इज हाउ माई डायरेक्टरी लुक लाइक, कैन यू ऐड मी, व्हाट शुड आई डू फॉर दिस, दैट्स नंबर 1, ठीक है। So first of all, you explain your code, what is the objective you want to achieve, and what each function currently which is part of this list, what it does. Let's say आपको कोड नहीं पास करना, खाली फंक्शन और ये पास करना, वो आप कर दीजिए, ठीक है। सेकेंड, आप फ्लो बताइए कि कौन सा मेथड किसके बाद कैसे कॉल होगा, राइट। एंड यू कैन आस्क कि भाई इसको कुछ इम्प्रूवमेंट कर सकता हूँ क्या, ठीक है। बट इट राइट, फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपने 4 फंक्शन में किया हुआ है, आप बोलना चाहते हो कि यार इसको कुछ इम्प्रोवाइज कर सकते हैं, आई वांटेड टू यूज मोर ऑफ अ थ्रेडिंग, सो इट विल गिव यू एन एग्जाम्पल फॉर दैट, एंड इफ इट मेक सेंस यू कैन यूज इट, ठीक है। या एक बहुत बड़ा मेथड आपको उसको ब्रेक डाउन करना है, ठीक है, कि दैट ऑल्सो यू कैन डू कि बट बिफोर डायरेक्टली आस्किंग इट टू ब्रेक, तो वो खुद से जैसा चाहिए वैसा ब्रेक कर देगा। First, you go with chain of thought and break down your function yourself. Either you write directly the prompt or get it done by the chat GPT, basically GenAI के पास. This is how shall I break it? What should be the different approach? And then you get it. ठीक है. And only return function name when they are going to do. तो उसके बाद ही आप अपना कोड लिखें, ठीक है। और उसके बाद फिर आप 1 बाय 1 फंक्शन का कोड जनरेट करिए, ठीक है, जो भी आपने लिखा है। अगर कोई आउटपुट फंक्शन सही नहीं है तो सिंपल से करिए और फिर उस पर बिल्ड अप ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट, प्रॉम्प्ट चेनिंग यूज़ करिए, ठीक है। एक और मेथड होता है, दिस इज क्रिटिकल, विच वी कॉल क्रिटिक मॉडल। क्रिटिक मॉडल में क्या होता है, इट एक्ट एज योर पीयर रिव्यू और एज अ कोड रिव्यू और एज अ मेंटोर, व्हाट वी डू इन द ह्यूमन लाइफ। सिमिलरली, एक बार आपने जो कोड जनरेट किया, लेट्स से मैं ये एग्जांपल लेता हूँ। अभी मुझे तो ये यहाँ का कोड ज़्यादा अच्छा लगा था, राइट, जो यहाँ पे इसने किया था। अब इस एग्जांपल को मैं चैट जीपीटी से वैलिडेट कराना चाहता हूँ, ठीक है। तो मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ, सॉरी कहाँ चला गया वो पार्स रिज्यूमे डिटेल वाला। लेट मी स्टार्ट विथ बेसिक प्रॉम्प्ट अगेन इन ए न्यू थ्रेड, ठीक है। और फिर मैंने जो यहाँ से ये प्रॉम्प्ट लिया है, इंस्टेड ऑफ व्हाट यू फील, मैं पूछूंगा कि व्हाट आर better in terms of readability, performance, error handling, how can I improve it further for each term. कभी भी आप फीडबैक मांगेंगे ना, तो फीडबैक मांगने के टाइम पर स्पेसिफाई फॉर व्हाट एग्जैक्टली यू आर आस्किंग फॉर फीडबैक। ऐसा नहीं बोलो कि ये अच्छा है क्या, तो फिर वो कुछ भी बोलेगा। तो अगर आपको रीडेबिलिटी इंप्रूव करना है, परफॉर्मेंस इंप्रूव करना है, एरर हैंडलिंग इंप्रूव करना है, वो चीज़ें, बिकॉज मुझे वहाँ दिखा था कि उसने एरर हैंडलिंग, सॉरी मैंने टेक्सट्रैक्ट वाला कोड दिया था उसको, ठीक है, वो उसने पिक किया और यहाँ पे उसको पेस्ट कर दिया। तो इसने उसके क्या बोला कि अगर मुझे इसको रीडेबल करना है तो फंक्शन को डिकम्पोजिशन करे, फंक्शंस को प्रॉपरली सेपरेट आउट कर सकता है, वेरिएबल नेम को डिस्क्रिप्टिव करना चाहिए, जो उसमें शायद नहीं किया उसने, तो वो उसको ब्रेक डाउन करके उसने वो डाला। और मोस्टली उसने मॉड्यूलर कर दिया, मेथड बाय मेथड बना दिया, ठीक है। परफॉर्मेंस के लिए इसने रेगुलर एक्सप्रेशन को ऑप्टिमाइज करने के लिए बोला, ठीक है। एरर हैंडलिंग के लिए टेक्सट्रैक्ट को बोला कि उस पर रीट्राई मैकेनिज्म लगा सकते हैं। तो जब आप जो चीज़ें पूछ रहे हो ना, उससे स्पेसिफिकली पूछिए कि परफॉर्मेंस इंप्रूव करना है, सिक्योरिटी इंप्रूव करना है, रीडेबिलिटी बढ़ाना है, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन अच्छा करना है, ठीक है, उस बेसिस पे ही चेंज करवाइए, ठीक है। सो दैट्स समथिंग विच यू वुड बी आस्किंग इट फॉर। तो अब इसने हर जगह पे कमेंट डाला, तो ये कि रीड क्या करता है, रिटर्न क्या करता है, वो वाला, एंड दैट्स हाउ इट वुड बी, राइट। सो दिस इज समथिंग विच यू वुड बी डूइंग इट, कि आप रीवैलिडेट कर सकते हो अपना काम। ज़रूरी नहीं है आपको क्लाउड को चैट जीपीटी देना, जीपीटी को क्लाउड देना, आप सेम में भी दे सकते हो। ठीक है, ओनली थिंग इज उसका थ्रेड बिल्कुल अलग शुरू करो और तब आप करिए। ठीक है, दिस इज कॉल्ड क्रिटिक मॉडल और गेट फीडबैक और इम्प्रोवाइज्ड ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट। तो एक बार आपने बिल्ड कर लिया, उसको फिर से इम्प्रोवाइज भी कर सकते हैं। ठीक है, और जो भी आप मॉडल बना रहे हैं आप उसको क्विकली इटरेट कर सकते हैं फॉर ईच स्टेप्स। ओके, so with this we would be ending today's session, right? What we are going to do next time is we'll talk about unit testing tips, documentation improvement, DevOps, and how to write the whole project, right? That's the idea. And then as a code evaluator, let's say आप कहीं कहीं पे एज अ टीम लीड भी काम करते हैं, तो अगर आप एज अ टेक लीड काम कर रहे हो या आपको टेक लीड जैसा बिहेव करना है, तो हाउ वुड यू डू दिस, राइट? मेमोरी इम्प्रोवाइजेशन कैसे करना है, मेंटोर कैसे काम कर सकते हैं कि स्पेशली फॉर फ्रेश इंजीनियर्स वो कैसे इसको यूटिलाइज करें। तो ये सारी चीज़ें हैं, एंड विल टॉक मे बी दिस थिंग next time. It would take around 1 hour again, and we would be completing this. By the time, I would recommend all of you to pick this use case which we picked here, right? डोंट यूज़ एनी एपीआई, एआई के अमेजॉन टेक्सट्रैक्ट यूज़ कर लो या गूगल यूज़ कर लो, सिर्फ पार्सिंग वाला ही फॉर्मेट स्टाइल यूज़ करके पीडीएफ पार्सर या ऑफलाइन वट एवर यू कैन डू, राइट? इफ यू कैन जनरेट द सेम कोड, एंड नेक्स्ट टाइम इफ यू कैन सिंपली, इसमें कॉन्सेप्ट होता है इफ़ यू आर यूजिंग चैट जीपीटी और वट एवर, टिपिकली इट अलाउज यू टू शेयर। तो आप शेयर करेंगे और आप अपनी लिंक जनरेट कर सकते हैं, जैसे मैंने लिंक जनरेट करी थी ना, तो जैसे लिंक जनरेट हो गई तो मैं ये लिंक फिर किसी के साथ भी शेयर कर सकता हूँ। ठीक है, सो आई वुड रिकमेंड एवरीवन टू पिक सेम टाइम, नेक्स्ट टाइम इट वुड बी एट 11 PM। so 11 PM से 12 PM में we will be finishing it, but by the time whenever you have time, maybe 1 hour 2 hours of time, go through this and generate on top of it. अमेजोन VS कोड में भी करना चाहते हो तो आप अमेजोन क्यू में भी सेम काम कर सकते हो, ताकि यहीं से कॉपी पेस्ट करें। बट इवेंचुअली इफ़ यू कैन मेक इट रेडी, फर्स्ट 5-10 minutes will pick 5 persons from the team who can showcase their work and what they have learned, okay, and what technology techniques they have followed from today's discussion. uh, I will be there for 10 more minutes if anyone has any questions or any discussions from this topic, but otherwise feel free to drop. Thank you. If anyone has any question, they can unmute and ask.
Jazakallah, Irshad bhai. That was very helpful. Maybe few minutes we'll have for question answers.
So we have few questions in chat.
Jest and playwright test framework procedures should be clarified. What? Sorry, I have not worked. I don't know about this technology, so to be frank. So if you can unmute and maybe ask, maybe explain me what does it do. Meanwhile, I'll do a Google search.
So Irshad bhai, these are test framework for UI test automation.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay, so basically, yes, if you are writing a Node.js code, so think about this, that if it writes the Node.js code, it can write this as well. So if you pass this always in the context as a library, that these are the library which I'm going to use, that would be passed as a context and it will take care from that. So I think that way you can actually, this would help you out. Okay. Google Cloud Prompt Engineering courses. Okay. I think better, instead of course, this is one link which I always keep as a guide, promptingguide.ai, right? This is very much in details whatever you need to learn about different techniques, but it only talks about technique. Applying it separately, it's all up to you. Okay, so that's something I would suggest you need to learn about it. But this is a very good technique. There are multiple techniques, but at least this zero shot, few shot, chain of thought, there are others as well, but prompt chaining, rag and all, that's okay. But I think these much is you need to remember, which we talked today from a developer perspective. There are very small cases where you do some other things as well, but I think for this, I think this would be enough. So that is it. It gives you a lot of example of how would you call a particular lambda text summarization, what should be, how shall I write my prompt. You can use it even for SQL development, query builder, and everything. Okay. Can you suggest some prompts for adding skills? Actually, to be frank, I use the same technique to help a guy in civil engineering, right? So I was doing that around May maybe. So I passed a resume, right? And specifically prompt that this is a resume for civil engineer having this experience, looking for job for these skills in Mumbai, India region. Provide clear recommendation to make this resume stand out. What additional information should be added? बहुत अच्छे से उसने एक सेगमेंट के लिए बताया, राइट. एंड देन प्रोफेशनल समरी ठीक नहीं आ रहा था तो मैंने उसको रिकमेंडेशन लिया एंड ऑल दोज थिंग्स एंड रेस्ट उसके बाद ह्यूमन लगा. बट 2 से ढाई घंटे में ना आपका रिज्यूमे भी बहुत टॉप नॉच हो जाता है. But one thing, what I would say for any resume, whatever you are adding, right, you should be able to explain that in that should be basically something which you have worked, or showcase that you can work, or able to answer any query in the interview. Otherwise, adding lot of things does not really help, especially in the interview. It can help you land till the interview, but not in the interview. Right? So make sure that way you can use it. Any other questions?
How can we develop a prompt offline?
Yes, you can develop the prompt offline, maybe in a simple notepad text if it is large prompt. Especially for doing the coding part, it is better to always start on a notepad, because many a time writing this in chatbot, as you saw, many a time I was doing it real time, so it get fizzled out. I always do a notes, or maybe here simply creating a text file, so that I can write a big prompts, right? This is really needed. There are a lot of tools and tech which comes ki prompt may versioning also you need to do. That is what I'm saying ki create a folder of for prompt engineering for every module, whatever prompts you write, and if you're making a change, do a versioning of that. If you tried between four prompts, keep a copy of that, adding context, adding example, because writing big prompts every time becomes what I could say uh, challenging. So it's better to always think about this. Keep a prompt, already write it as a separate, and then come here. And this thought process of breaking it down onto these steps, first design the flow, get that sorted out, design the pseudo code for every function, then get the name of each function, then generate the code for each function, and then add the prompt chaining to add exception handling, logging, conditions, and extra. If you do all at once, then the code gets haywire here or there. But if you follow these steps, many a time, I think 80% of the time, you would be able to get what you want. There are certain hiccups which we would be touching next time, that are on the subsequent slide. Hope that answers the question. Licensed LLM versus open source LLM, what are some key decisions to decide? That is for the organization. Any open source LLM for coding there are, but you need to look for the benchmark, that how those are performing with respect to, let's say, these closed source LLMs. Code Gamma and all, you can run it offline. Best is because that can be run on offline on your machine, but again it requires a powerful machine. If you can make it run, it's better. Second, like Claude.ai and ChatGPT, these are very much fine-tuned for generating very good quality codes, but these are heavy. But free version also helps you. But yes, if you are working on sensitive data, especially you are a startup building on a core tech, then I would recommend either use a paid solution or use a open source one. Don't paste all of your code there. If code is not your core property, then you can do it. But if code is something is an IP of yours, then I would really recommend don't do that, right? Because that's what your USP would be. I literally saw things. Okay, 6 months before, one of our customer was doing something on that. For 4 to 6 months down the line, that which was not possible on ChatGPT was started automated possible with the same examples, and now giving better results, or I would say similar results, not even better, similar results or same results that way. So make sure if you are working on any core IP ideas, don't simply paste it on paid free tools. I would say paid closed source tools are also there, like cloud, you can host it on AWS as a on Bedrock. So your data would remain within that within your AWS account. So similarly for other cloud as well, or if you host it somewhere, that also you can do. Hope that answered the question. Uh, any last one or two questions, if there is any? Meanwhile, for bonus, I'll pass this YouTube video. Maybe just open it in the window. If you have time, anytime, watch this. This will help you build your thought process around how things get supplied from one part to the other.
Sir Farhan here.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So this prompt engineering is it like a good career like going forward, or it is just like part of every profession? It will be a part of profession.
Prompt engineering, I think, would be part of every profession which deals with computers. But as a developer, it would be very much kind of an intended skills. For example, as a communication, what you do, right? I would say it would be of that level. That because everyone wants value of money, including you, right? You are not going to spend creating your resume from start to end and take, let's say, full 1 day or 2 day. What you can do within 2 hours, but yes, your thought process has to be very clear, what things goes, what not, and all, right? Research and analysis spends times on those, right, rather than writing code. That's writing algorithms makes sense, but writing boilerplate code, writing level 3 thinking code, it does not really matter. That can be generated by these, right? So hope that answer your question. So prompt engineering.
Yeah, thanks.
So mm. Shayyad Shiraz Ali give more info about GenAI models. We had a recordings of last week. Maybe we'll share that here for the GenAI models. What are the different models which you can use, uh, especially for open source code wala, right? So I follow this Llama. If you see up top, right? So there is Olama is something which helps you run it locally, right? And then you can simply go to Hugging Face or Olama, any of the site, right? Okay, and we'll simply walk you through. You install it locally, and then you can search for any, let's say, code model. These are different code models. 13 billion requires at least 32 GB RAM, or at least more than 16 GB RAM at least. 7B and below would work. Code Gamma is good model. Code Gamma 2 especially, right? And these are different model. Codestral is by Mistral. This model, if you are running it locally, right? These are different models actually. See how many pulls are there, right? This gives you an idea, right? And also maybe watch it over internet, that what is something being up for and all that. Okay, and this is updating very lot. Today if somebody is good, within weeks that may not be relevant. That's how the speed is happening. If somebody build a code star, then something like that on top of code llama. Okay, and this allows, even if you are a startup owner, right? This allow if you have a special uh, code which you wants to train, let's say on a simple 3 billion parameter model. 3 billion is something which you can run offline and can get trained within 2-3 days or fine tune for a specific code. कि आप अपनी कंपनी का ही सारा कोड उठा के उसको ट्रेन कर दो. Okay. Any last question uh, from
Uh,
anyone?
Sorry, one more time that if we want to apart from our professional things slightly, if we want to earn using anything like any ideas like how we can.
Maybe this is out of context for today's discussion.
Yeah.
The team can help if you're part of any of the MFIRD groups, right? You can. There are a lot of people which can help you on those areas as well. But this
You
may not.
can take assistance from freelancing websites. There are many portals. You can for freelancing. You can go over there. You can get many projects to do. I think that's all for today. So Rishad bhai, thanks a lot, and
Jazakallah.
thanks to all the audience. and inshallah we'll have next week. We'll send
Next
out the
Yeah,
details
thank
about the link and the time. Inshallah.
and pick that task which we have shared that scans your own resume. You should be able to write code in any of your language. Scan your own maybe 2 3 resume and able to get those five information. Just copy that from the chat. Just pasting it here. With that, Jazakallah khair for your time. From
Thanks, bye.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, all.